I never thought a single day could turn my life upside down. The funeral was supposed to be quiet, solemn, a time to mourn. But in the crowd, I saw her, my daughter-in-law, slipping something into my husband's jacket. My heart skipped, my hands trembled. What was she hiding? And when I looked closer, everything I believed about my family shattered in an instant. The room was silent, heavy with grief. The scent of incense lingered in the air, mixing with a faint metallic tang of tears. My husband sat in his chair, his hands resting limply on his knees, eyes fixed somewhere far away, lost in his own sorrow. Around us, family and friends murmured prayers, shared condolences, their faces blurred in my teary gaze. I had come prepared to mourn, to grieve quietly, to bury my emotions along with the casket. Yet, the moment my eyes fell on her, my daughter-in-law, I felt an icy chill run down my spine. She moved with deliberate calm, her hand brushing my husband's jacket as she slipped something into it. My breath caught. I wanted to look away, to pretend I hadn't noticed, but something inside me demanded attention. I waited until the murmurs grew softer, until the room seemed to hold its breath with me. Slowly, I approached, my steps tentative but determined. My fingers reached for the jacket, feeling the small, foreign object hidden in the pocket. My pulse raced as I unfolded it. What I found was not just a piece of paper, but a revelation that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. It was a letter, folded with care, but the words on it were sharp, cutting, and filled with secrets. The ink seemed to burn into my eyes as I read. Betrayals, lies, debts, and plans I could never have imagined. She had been manipulating my husband, whispering promises, creating rifts, and I had been blind. Every smile, every gesture I had assumed was innocent now seemed coated with deception. Tears stung my eyes, but anger burned hotter. I looked around the room, seeing familiar faces now tinted with suspicion. My son, standing by the doorway, unaware of what had just been revealed, was laughing softly at a joke someone made. My heart ached, not just for the betrayal, but for the innocence lost in the web of lies spun around us. I remembered the days before, when our family had seemed united. The hospital visits, the laughter at small weddings, the quiet evenings spent together, all now felt like illusions. The weight of reality pressed on me, and I realized that grief was only the beginning. Betrayal had arrived in our home, disguised as tragedy. I confronted her later, in the empty kitchen where shadows danced across the walls. Her calm smile was infuriating, as if she had anticipated my discovery. "Why?" I whispered, my voice breaking under the strain of years of trust shattered in a heartbeat. She looked at me with eyes that were cold, calculating, yet strangely proud. "It had to be done," she said. "For him, for me, for all of us." Her words felt like knives twisting deeper with each syllable. I wanted to scream, to demand explanations, to drag the truth into the open. But I knew the confrontation could wait. The story had only begun. The letter was the first layer, a door that once opened would reveal rooms of deception I could not unsee. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat in the living room, the letter in my hands, reliving every moment, replaying every smile and gesture, trying to discern where innocence ended and deceit began. The shadows of the funeral lingered in my mind, mixing with the memories of hospital visits, weddings, small celebrations, every event now tainted with uncertainty. Days passed, each heavier than the last. Conversations that once felt safe were now laced with hidden meanings. I began to notice patterns, subtle interactions that had once gone unnoticed. The way she laughed at his jokes, too sweetly, the way my husband looked at her when he thought no one was watching. The hospital bills, the whispered phone calls, the secret meetings, all pieces of a puzzle that formed a picture I could not escape. And yet, amidst the pain and the betrayal, a strange clarity emerged. I realized that grief, sorrow, and even anger were parts of a process that would lead me to truth. The funeral had been more than a goodbye. It had been the opening of a door to reality, to understanding, to uncovering the hidden layers of those I thought I knew. As I delved deeper, the story unfolded like a river twisting through unknown terrain. Each revelation brought more shock, more despair, but also a sense of purpose. I could not undo the past, could not bring back the trust that had been broken, but I could navigate the present, uncover the lies, and reclaim a future built on truth, no matter how painful it would be. The days turned into weeks, and with every step, I felt both weaker and stronger. Weak from the weight of betrayal, stronger from the resolve to face it head-on. Every hospital visit, every family gathering, every whispered conversation was a reminder that the morning after the funeral, the house felt hollow. The echoes of whispered condolences had faded, leaving only a heavy, suffocating silence. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, illuminating dust particles that floated like tiny memories in the air. My husband sat at the dining table, staring at his untouched cup of tea, the letter still folded on the counter. He didn't notice me enter. Perhaps he was too lost in grief, or perhaps he already sensed the storm building in the house. I decided to confront the situation gradually, with care. My son was at work, unaware of the letter and the tension thickening like fog around us. I retrieved my phone and began tracing the hidden messages, bank statements, and hospital bills that hinted at the truth. It was as if a part of our lives had been lived in shadows while we remained blind, believing the light. Each message revealed manipulation. Each bill pointed to secret decisions, and each whisper from neighbors told stories I never wanted to hear. The next day brought another revelation. My daughter-in-law, calm and composed, had arranged a small wedding celebration for a distant relative. It was meant to be a joyous gathering, yet every laugh and every decoration felt like a taunt. I observed her interactions closely, the gentle touches on my husband's arm, the subtle glances she threw at the guests, the careful way she maneuvered conversations to her advantage. There was charm in her words, but beneath it, I sensed a strategy, a meticulous plan executed with precision. I kept the letter with me at all times, reading and rereading it when I could be alone. It spoke of intentions, promises made behind closed doors, and arrangements I had never been part of. She had been weaving a network of control, financial and emotional, ensuring that even in my husband's absence of awareness, her influence was unchallenged. My heart ached at the thought of the life we had shared being quietly hijacked. The hospital visit came next. My husband's routine checkup had coincided with a sudden emergency involving a distant cousin. It was chaos, doctors rushing, monitors beeping, nurses moving swiftly. In the middle of it all, I noticed her again, slipping into rooms unnoticed, speaking softly to the staff, and guiding my husband away from questions. Her presence was subtle yet commanding, an invisible hand steering the flow of events. My suspicion grew, solidifying into certainty. This was not mere chance. At the wedding gathering later, I watched her orchestrate interactions with guests, hiding truths behind smiles and laughter. The conversations were careful, calculated, leaving no room for questions. My husband, still unaware of the letter and its revelations, remained gentle, kind, and trusting. Every act of mine, every glance at the letter, felt like a small rebellion against the tide of deceit flowing around me. Weeks passed, and with them, a slow unraveling of layers. Neighbors began sharing observations, small details that added to the growing puzzle. Conversations I had dismissed as trivial now carried weight. The letter had been a key, and each subsequent observation unlocked more of the story. Secret debts, clandestine meetings, hidden promises, and whispered manipulations. The betrayal was not singular. It was an intricate web carefully woven over time. I confronted her once more, this time with evidence, receipts, phone messages, hospital records, and eyewitness accounts. She did not falter. Her calm smile remained, her eyes unwavering. "Everything I did was for the family," she said. "You just failed to understand the bigger picture." I realized that her manipulations were not only strategic but also deeply personal, a game of control over emotions and perception. Days turned into nights, each heavy with contemplation. I learned to navigate the minefield of her influence, choosing words carefully, observing behaviors closely, and protecting my husband from further manipulation. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, yet I felt a growing strength inside me. I could no longer be passive. The family, our trust, and our peace depended on my vigilance. Eventually, the truth emerged more vividly than ever. The hidden debts were resolved, the hospital situations clarified, and secrets laid bare. The family began to see the reality beyond her carefully crafted charm. My husband, though shocked, understood the gravity of the situation. The confrontation that followed was not angry but resolute. It was a reclaiming of boundaries, trust, and respect. Through the turmoil, I realized that pain had a purpose. The funeral, the hidden letter, the hospital crises, and even the wedding celebrations were not merely tragic or... The next morning, the sun barely touched the walls of our home. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but inside, the house remained heavy with unease. My husband moved about slowly, still unaware of the magnitude of the secrets surrounding him. I watched him, heart aching, wondering how someone so gentle could be caught in the web of deceit that had silently wrapped around our family. The hospital became a second home in those days. My husband's health was minor, nothing life-threatening, but she used every visit as a stage. She whispered to doctors, guided nurses, smiled at other patients, and always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Every word she said was calculated, every gesture purposeful. I began to document everything, small notes, phone photos, even recordings, preparing for the day when truth would finally surface. At the wedding celebration, tension coiled tighter than ever. Guests arrived in clusters, smiles painted over nervousness. The decorations were bright, the music cheerful, yet the air felt thick with unspoken truths. She floated through the crowd, a perfect hostess, but her eyes darted constantly, calculating, measuring. She whispered in my husband's ear at least 3 times, each time redirecting attention from conversations I wanted him to hear. I realized this was a pattern, subtle manipulation, repeated over time, all unnoticed by those around us. I remembered the letter again, and how much it had revealed. Every day brought a new clue, a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, painted a picture of careful orchestration. My daughter-in-law was not merely cunning, she was strategic, always thinking several steps ahead. The hospital, the funeral, the wedding, each event was a stage she used to her advantage. One evening, as the house settled into quiet, I confronted her in private. "Why?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands shook. She did not flinch. "I am doing what must be done," she said softly. "You see only the surface. I see the future." Her calmness infuriated me, but beneath it, I felt a shiver of respect for the precision with which she moved. The following days brought an unexpected ally, a family friend, someone who had observed the subtle manipulations, the little inconsistencies. With their help, I began piecing together a timeline of events, the hidden payments, the secret messages, the whispers to staff, the strategic visits. Every interaction, every word she had spoken, suddenly made sense. What seemed like random actions were carefully planned steps in a bigger design. My husband began to notice small inconsistencies himself. Questions that had gone unasked before started surfacing in his mind. He noticed missing documents, unexplained hospital charges, the way she smiled when certain topics were mentioned. Slowly, awareness dawned. The veil of deception began to lift, revealing not just her intentions, but the silent complicity of those who had ignored the signs. The confrontation came at last, during a small gathering in the living room. I laid out the evidence carefully: receipts, messages, statements, photos. The room was silent, except for the faint ticking of a wall clock, measuring seconds like heartbeats. She looked at us, calm yet unreadable, as if expecting the moment. My husband's eyes widened in shock, but there was no anger, only stunned realization. "What is this?" he asked softly, his voice trembling. I spoke then, clearly, each word deliberate. "These are the truths you have hidden, the actions you have taken, the manipulation you thought would remain unnoticed. It ends now." Her lips curved in a smile that was neither happy nor sad. "I only acted for the family," she said. "To protect, to guide." "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You acted for yourself. You manipulated, deceived, and hid behind our trust. That is not protection. That is betrayal." The hours that followed were intense. Family members, once oblivious, were drawn into the truth. Emotions ran high: anger, sadness, relief, shock. The wedding, the hospital, the funeral, every event was re-examined through the lens of honesty. My husband embraced reality, shaken but resolute. The healing could begin, now that the lies had been exposed. I learned something vital in that time. Grief, betrayal, and heartbreak do not end easily, but they teach resilience. Pain is not weakness, it is preparation for strength. The funeral had started the journey, the hospital and wedding had tested it, and the confrontation completed it. From that day forward, our family moved forward differently, with awareness, with boundaries, and with the knowledge that even the closest bonds. The hospital became the center of our lives for days. My husband's routine checkups now felt like a stage for hidden agendas. Nurses whispered to each other, unaware of the larger drama unfolding. I watched closely as she moved with the grace of someone who knew exactly how to avoid suspicion, yet subtly influence every decision. Each glance, each word she spoke to the doctors and staff was calculated. One afternoon, the unexpected happened. A doctor called me into a private room. "We've found discrepancies in your husband's medical records," he said quietly, sliding a folder across the table. My hands trembled as I opened it. Test results that should have been routine were missing, prescriptions altered, charges unaccounted for. My heart raced. Had she been interfering with his health care as well? I confronted her again, this time with the evidence. She did not flinch. "I only acted to ensure everything went smoothly," she said softly. Her calm composure was infuriating. I realized then that the person I was dealing with was not reckless. She was meticulous, precise, and frighteningly patient. Every action, every decision, had been planned to manipulate outcomes without drawing attention. The next challenge came at a wedding gathering of extended family. The house was alive with laughter, music, and bright decorations. Guests smiled, unaware of the storm brewing under the surface. She floated through the crowd effortlessly, greeting each person, hiding her intentions behind charm. But I was prepared this time. Every gesture she made, I noted silently, observing patterns that would have escaped anyone else. During the event, she led my husband away to a private room under the guise of discussing family matters. I followed discreetly, determined not to let her control the narrative this time. Inside, she spoke in her calm, persuasive tone, trying to sway him again. But I stepped forward, my voice steady, laying out all the evidence I had collected. His eyes widened with shock as he finally understood the depth of manipulation. "You've been controlling everything," he said quietly, disbelief etched on his face. "It was for the family," she replied, her expression unwavering. "No," I said firmly. "It was for you, for yourself. That is not protection. That is betrayal." Tears streamed down his face, not from anger, but from the pain of realizing how close he had come to being deceived. The room felt heavy with tension, yet a sense of clarity began to settle. The truth, though painful, had been revealed. In the following weeks, our family slowly began to rebuild. Conversations that once seemed routine were now filled with honesty. Boundaries were set. Trust, though fragile, began to mend. Every hospital visit, every family gathering, every wedding event now carried the lesson of vigilance. I realized that life would always present challenges, but the way we responded defined the strength of our family. One evening, sitting alone in the quiet house, I reflected on the journey. The funeral that had seemed like an end had been a beginning. The hidden letter, the subtle manipulations, the tense confrontations, all of it had revealed not just betrayal, but the resilience within me. I understood that grief, anger, and heartbreak were not just trials, but tools that shaped character and prepared us for whatever came next. Slowly, life returned to a fragile normal. My husband's health stabilized, the wedding celebrations resumed with genuine joy, and the hospital visits were now routine rather than tense. Yet, the lessons remained. Every smile, every gesture, every interaction carried new meaning. I had learned to see beyond appearances, to recognize subtle manipulations, and to protect the family I cherished. In the end, the journey through grief, deception, and revelation taught me that strength is not the absence of pain, but the courage to face it. Betrayal may shake the foundations of trust, but with honesty, patience, and resilience, even the deepest wounds can heal. And I, having faced the shadows of deceit, emerged stronger, wiser, and determined to safeguard the truth in the family I loved more than anything. The nights became the hardest. Silence settled over the house like a heavy blanket, but my mind refused to rest. Memories of the funeral, the subtle smile she had worn as she slipped the letter into my husband's jacket, haunted me. I replayed every interaction, every gentle touch she had offered him, and every word she had whispered, trying to find a moment where I could have intervened sooner. The house seemed smaller now, as though the walls themselves had absorbed the tension and betrayal that filled it. Hospital visits continued, though my husband's health remained mostly stable. Each time we arrived, I could feel her eyes on me, calculating, measuring. She knew that I knew now, yet she moved with the confidence of someone who believed she was untouchable. Doctors and nurses, unaware of the ongoing drama, treated us politely, but I began to notice their subtle gestures, a raised eyebrow, a pause in speech, a whispered comment that gave hints I was not supposed to hear. One day, while walking down a quiet corridor, I overheard her speaking softly to a nurse. The words were careful, measured, almost innocent. "Make sure he takes his medications properly. We don't want any mistakes." But the tone, the way she emphasized certain words, made it clear that she had been manipulating even these small aspects of our lives. I realized that her web of influence extended far beyond my initial fears. The wedding celebration approached again, this time for a closer family member. The preparations were grand, full of music, decorations, and laughter. Yet, I watched her every move, noting the subtle ways she positioned herself near my husband, guided conversations away from certain topics, and steered the family's attention away from uncomfortable truths. She was always present, yet always controlling, a shadow puppet master who made everyone dance to her rhythm without noticing. During the celebration, a small incident triggered a breakthrough. A distant cousin, unaware of the tension, mentioned something about finances and hospital visits. My husband's brow furrowed, confusion and concern flashing in his eyes. I took the opportunity to quietly explain the discrepancies I had uncovered. The realization hit him slowly, like a wave crashing against the shore, bringing shock, disbelief, and sadness all at once. The confrontation that followed was inevitable. In a quiet room away from the guests, I laid out the evidence once more: documents, messages, photos, and notes meticulously collected over weeks. She looked at us calmly, unafraid, as though expecting this moment. My husband's eyes, filled with pain and betrayal, met mine. He finally understood the depth of manipulation that had occurred right under his nose. "I trusted her," he whispered, voice heavy with regret. "How did I not see this?" "Because she was careful," I replied, holding back tears. "She controlled every detail, every word, every interaction. But now, we see clearly." She tried to justify her actions, claiming that everything was for the family, that her intentions had been protective. But the calm in her voice did not mask the truth. She had acted for control, not care. Slowly, piece by piece, the family began to understand the extent of the deception. Conversations once casual were now full of awareness. Trust, though shaken, began to be rebuilt with honesty and careful boundaries. At night, I reflected on all that had happened: the funeral, the hidden letter, the hospital visits, the weddings. Each event had been a test, revealing not only the hidden manipulations of my daughter-in-law, but also the resilience within myself. Pain had become a teacher, grief a guide, and betrayal a mirror showing who I had become in the process: vigilant, strong, and determined to protect my family from further harm. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet victories. My husband regained his sense of clarity. The family grew more attentive to subtle dynamics, and she, though present, could no longer operate with the same unchecked influence. The house slowly felt like home again, the tension easing just enough to allow for laughter, conversation, and connection. Yet I remained aware. Life had shown me that deceit could appear in the most unexpected forms, in moments meant for joy or sorrow, in gestures meant for care. Vigilance had become a necessity, but so had compassion for my husband, for the family, and for myself. I realized that strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing it head-on, uncovering hidden truths, and learning from the shadows to embrace the light. The following days brought a mixture of relief and unease. Though some truths had surfaced, I could feel the remaining threads of deception quietly winding through the family. Every conversation, every glance, every small interaction carried a hidden weight. Even in moments of laughter, I noticed the subtle pauses and shifts, reminders that the battle for trust was far from over. One evening, a phone call changed everything. The hospital had discovered an irregularity in some older records, medications that had been prescribed without proper documentation, tests that had been delayed or altered. My heart sank. I immediately realized her subtle influence had extended even deeper than I had imagined. I prepared myself for another confrontation, this time armed with even more evidence, determined not to let her control the narrative any longer. At the next family gathering, tensions ran high. She moved among the guests, smiling, laughing, hiding the storm beneath a veneer of charm. But I could see her cracks, a fleeting hesitation, a nervous glance, a momentary stiffening of posture. The careful mask of control she wore was beginning to show signs of strain. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, was under my scrutiny now. I was ready to expose the truth fully. Finally, in a quiet corner of the room, I confronted her with everything: the old hospital records, the discrepancies, the manipulations, and the lies. My husband stood beside me, his expression a mixture of sorrow and relief. "It ends here," I said firmly, voice unwavering. "No more hiding, no more deceit. We will face the truth together, or we will not face it at all." She looked at us, calm but defeated. For the first time, the careful composure I had seen in her eyes wavered. She realized the web she had built was unraveling. The family witnessed the confrontation, and one by one, they acknowledged the manipulations they had overlooked, the subtle signs they had ignored. The weight of honesty pressed down on everyone, but it was a relief as well, a cleansing of years of unspoken tension. The hospital visits that followed were no longer a stage for her schemes. Doctors, nurses, and staff now acted with transparency, guided by the truth we had uncovered. My husband's health stabilized fully, free from the manipulations that had threatened it. I watched him regain confidence and clarity, and I felt a deep sense of protection and triumph for having preserved what mattered most: his well-being and our family's unity. The wedding celebrations, too, changed in nature. Joy returned, but now it was tempered with awareness. Guests laughed and celebrated, but the family remained vigilant, understanding that happiness required honesty, trust, and care. She remained a part of the gatherings, but her influence was contained, her ability to manipulate curtailed. The lessons of grief, deception, and revelation had created a stronger, more united family. In the quiet of the night, I reflected on all that had happened. The funeral had begun a journey I could never have anticipated. The letter she had slipped into my husband's jacket was the spark that ignited the uncovering of hidden truths. Hospital visits, weddings, and daily interactions had been the stages on which the drama unfolded, revealing not only her manipulations, but also the resilience, vigilance, and courage within me. Through every trial, I learned that life's challenges are never just about pain. They are about growth. Betrayal is painful, but it teaches discernment. Deception is frightening, but it teaches awareness. And grief, no matter how heavy, is not an end but a beginning that can transform weakness into strength, sorrow into clarity, and despair into resolve. By the end, our family emerged stronger, more aware, and closer than before. Trust was rebuilt, carefully and deliberately. The lessons of the funeral, hospital, and weddings would remain forever imprinted in our hearts, a reminder that even when the world seems filled with deceit, honesty, courage, and love can prevail. And in that, I found hope, strength, and the knowledge that no matter the trials, we could endure, protect, and heal.
Ah.
Now I understand, clearly grinning face with sweat. You want me to continue the story exactly from where we left off, not start a new one or shorten it, and keep expanding it into the full detailed narrative for AI voiceover. Let's pick up right after the last confrontation with the daughter-in-law, continuing the funeral, hospital, and wedding drama, adding more emotional tension, suspense, and internal monologues. The days following the confrontation were heavy. The house was quieter, but the tension had not fully lifted. I could feel it in the air, a lingering weight, subtle yet unrelenting. My husband walked through the room slowly, lost in thought, occasionally glancing at me with eyes that reflected shock, sadness, and a dawning awareness of everything he had overlooked. She moved around the house like a shadow, calm on the surface, but tense beneath. I knew she was carefully measuring every step, every word, every glance. It was as if she was waiting for a single misstep, a moment when we might falter, giving her a chance to regain control. But I was alert now, watchful, more aware than ever before, and I refused to allow her the slightest advantage. The hospital visits resumed, and with them came subtle reminders of how deep her influence had been. Records that should have been routine now made sense in a different light. Missed appointments, unexplained changes in prescriptions, delays in tests, all part of her careful orchestration. I began to speak directly with the staff, asking detailed questions, requesting copies of every document. They looked at me with surprise, sometimes hesitation, but I felt a quiet satisfaction in reclaiming control of this part of our lives. At the next wedding gathering, the stakes rose even higher. The house was filled with laughter, music, and celebration, but beneath the surface, a tension hummed like electricity. Guests were unaware of the storm beneath the decorations, the carefully planned manipulations that had once gone unnoticed. She floated through the crowd, charming, poised, commanding attention while subtly guiding conversations away from any uncomfortable topics. I watched her closely, noting every gesture, every shift in her expression. My husband, though more aware now, still struggled with disbelief. The letters, the hidden bills, the subtle manipulations, all had left scars, and he was learning slowly how to see through the facade. I took my time, observing, listening, ready to step in when necessary, making sure the next moves were mine to control. The tension finally erupted during the evening dinner. A distant cousin mentioned an old hospital incident, something trivial that, in her mind, should have gone unnoticed. But I seized the moment. I calmly laid out the discrepancies, the inconsistencies, the manipulations I had documented over the past weeks. My husband's eyes widened, shock giving way to anger, then determination. He finally began to grasp the scope of her control, how subtly she had directed events, altered perceptions, and manipulated both him and the extended family. She tried to respond, her voice smooth, claiming she had acted for the family's well-being. But this time, I interrupted, voice steady and firm. It was not for the family. It was for you, for control, for power. That is not protection. That is deception. The room went silent. Guests froze, unsure how to react, their eyes darting between the three of us. The daughter-in-law's mask wavered, the calm she had relied on for weeks faltering for the first time. She realized that her subtle orchestration could no longer hold against the truth laid bare in careful, undeniable detail. In the nights that followed, I reflected constantly on the events, the funeral that had begun this unraveling, the hospital visits that had revealed her reach, the weddings that had acted as stages for her subtle control. Every smile, every whispered word, every gesture had been a piece of the puzzle. And now, piece by piece, the puzzle was coming together, exposing the depth of betrayal, but also revealing the strength I had gained in facing it. My husband became more attentive, more involved, learning to question, observe, and understand. Together, we began rebuilding trust, not only with each other, but within the extended family. The daughter-in-law remained present, but her influence had been curtailed. She could no longer manipulate events undetected, and each interaction she attempted was met with vigilance. I learned that grief, betrayal, and deception were not just trials to endure. They were teachers. The funeral, hospital, and wedding events were chapters of a story that demanded awareness, courage, and resilience. Pain, I realized, was not weakness. It was the tool that sharpened understanding, the fire that tempered patience, the mirror that reflected strength when all else seemed broken. By the end, our family had changed. We were cautious but connect. The night after the confrontation, the house felt like a grave. Silence hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but inside, every shadow seemed alive, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I sat alone in the living room, the letter still in my hand, trembling slightly. My husband was upstairs, his footsteps quiet, careful, as though the weight of what he had learned slowed every movement. Tears came without warning, not just for the betrayal, but for the years lost in blind trust, for the gentle moments that had been carefully tainted, for the illusion of peace we had once believed in. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to stop the shaking, trying to anchor myself in the truth that now seemed so fragile. The next morning, the hospital called. Another routine checkup had turned into a minor crisis. A mix-up in records, a delay in a test, something small but enough to send my heart racing. I went with my husband, feeling both dread and resolve. And there she was, calm, composed, guiding nurses and doctors with a smile that masked everything I had come to know. I followed every move she made, my eyes sharp, my mind cataloging each subtle gesture. Every word she whispered, every gentle touch, every glance, they had been carefully rehearsed for weeks, perhaps months. I felt a wave of anger rise, but I held it back. This was a stage, and now I was fully awake to its performance. Later, at the wedding gathering of a distant cousin, the emotional storm returned. Music and laughter filled the air, but I heard only the underlying tension. Guests smiled, unaware of the silent war unfolding beneath the decorations, beneath the bright lights, beneath the joyous faces. She moved gracefully among them, a picture of charm, but her every interaction was calculated, designed to control perception, to guide attention, to manipulate without anyone noticing. I watched, heart pounding, as my husband engaged in conversation with her. I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes, the hesitation born from confusion and heartbreak. It was a painful sight. The man I had loved, gentle and trusting, now caught between the truth I had revealed and the careful illusions she had built. I stepped closer, my voice soft but firm. You deserve to know everything. Don't let her guide your heart blindfolded again. The moment of reckoning came during dinner. A comment from a guest about hospital visits triggered the unraveling. My husband turned to me, eyes wide, questions forming in his mind that had no answers yet. I spoke gently, laying out every hidden fact, every manipulation, every secret move she had made. The room grew still. Even the laughter seemed to pause, holding its breath as the truth poured forth. Her smile faltered. The confidence she had worn like armor cracked, revealing the tension underneath. For the first time, she realized she could no longer control the narrative, no longer dictate perception. My husband's gaze met mine, pain, shock, but finally clarity. He began to see what I had been trying to protect him from, what I had been documenting, what I had been preparing him for. Tears ran down his face, not of anger, but of grief. Grief for the innocence lost, for the trust shattered, for the realization of how easily the family had been manipulated. I took his hand, holding it firmly, offering comfort not only to him but to myself. The storm had not ended, but we were no longer adrift. In the quiet aftermath, I reflected on everything. The funeral, the hospital visits, the wedding gatherings, the hidden letters. Each had been a lesson in awareness, in resilience, in strength. I realized that the greatest pain often teaches the greatest lessons. Betrayal is cruel, but it forces clarity. Deception is frightening, but it sharpens perception. Grief is heavy, but it reveals inner strength we never knew existed. By the end of that night, though the house was still heavy with the echoes of the past, a small light had returned. My husband, though wounded, was aware, alert, and ready to reclaim what had been quietly stolen from us. The daughter-in-law remained present, but her power to deceive had diminished. She could no longer operate in shadows. I understood then that life would always present challenges, some gentle, some brutal. But the difference lay in the ability to face them, to confront deceit, to uncover hidden truths, to protect those we love, and to rise from grief with strength unshaken. And so, amidst the quiet of the night, I felt a surge of determination. I would guard my family, not with anger, but with awareness, not with revenge, but